Well, here we are, the final reading, the 106, is it? In this incredibly long-running saga. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Here we go with conclusion. Over 2 billion. 2,000 years after the birth of Jesus Christ, 2.3 billion people around the globe claim to be his followers. 2.3 billion. Okay, so if this history proves anything, it proves that not all of those 2 billion will be that observant of their faith. Not all of them will be what you might call orthodox. Many of them might have a shaky grasp on some of the basics of Christianity, but then again, so did many Christian leaders. Many might indeed seem to be acting in flat opposition to the values Jesus espoused. But 2.3 billion, that's a third of the world's population, which makes Christianity by far the biggest faith in the world. Reports of Christianity's death are greatly exaggerated. A global faith. In the 1930s, Hilaire Belloc wrote rather smugly that Europe is the faith, and the faith is Europe, even allowing for the fact that he completely ignored Christianity's origin and history in the East. You could see his point. In 1900, over 80% of Christians lived in Europe and North America, and the overwhelming majority of Christians were non-Latino whites. But history has a habit of suddenly switching directions. In his book, The Napoleon of Notting Hill, Belloc's friend, the far more talented G.K. Chesterton, describes one of humanity's favourite games, a pastime he calls Cheat the Prophet. The players listen very carefully and respectfully to all that clever men have to say about what is to happen in the next generation. The players then wait until all the clever men are dead and bury them nicely. Then they go and do something else. That is all. For a race of simple tastes, however, it is great fun. Nothing exemplifies this more than Christianity. Just when you think it is going in one direction, the players reverse direction and do something else. And today, Belloc's confident assertion looks, to use a technical historical term, utter pants. Although Europe is still home to some 588 million Christians, Latin America is coming up fast with 544 million, Africa has 493 million, Asia 352 million, and North America about 286 million believers. Today then, Europe and North America combined have less than 40% of the world's Christians. The centre of Christianity has shifted again. All change. We should not be surprised. If there's one thing that this history shows us, it is that Christianity, for all its emphasis on tradition and foundations, has an incredible ability to adapt to its surroundings and reinvent itself. Ironically, Darwin would be impressed. How has it done this? How has it survived? It has survived because it has always been carried on by ordinary people. Any history of Christianity is naturally dominated by the big beasts, by the Pauls and the Augustines and the Gregories and the Luthers. And of course those guys matter. But the people who have really and always carried the story forward are those on the ground, the foot sloggers. Real Christianity has always in fact been the stubborn faith of exploited and oppressed people. Through times of power and times of weakness, under good leaders and bad leaders, and downright despicably evil leaders, there have always been the real Christians, struggling on, trying to follow Jesus and do the kinds of things they believed he wanted them to do. Today, though, many of those people have one thing that their forebears never had. They have a voice. One voice. So what are they saying? Well, a huge number of them are demanding the right to worship in freedom. Of those 2.3 billion Christians, perhaps as many as 100 to 200 billion of them live under conditions of oppression or persecution. The situation is particularly bad in countries that either have an extremist Muslim government or where extremist Islamic fanatics wield strong influence. With a long history of antagonism and incomprehension between the two faiths, dialogue is difficult, but absolutely vital. In the meantime, we should be aware of those who are denied their religious liberty. Many of them are demanding the right to participate. It has probably not escaped your notice that there are these people to be found all around the world called women, for example. And in the last 100 years, in the West at least, their position has utterly changed. You can argue all you like about what Paul actually meant in 1 Timothy, or even whether he wrote it at all, but the fact is that for the bulk of 2,000 years, women have provided the backbone of the church. We should not be surprised if at last they are beginning to show some spine. quite a lot are demanding decentralisation. Not perhaps in so many words. You don't see a great many "decentralisation now" marches being organised, not least because there's nobody in a central enough position to organise them. But the idea of the old-style monarchical bishop has gone. Whatever statements are issued by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Pope, or anyone else, people are making up their own minds anyway. It is undoubtedly the case that Catholics in the West are using contraception, despite the official policy. Everybody has just agreed not to talk about it. There is a call for accountability and transparency. The scandals in the Church over finance and corruption, and most of all over child abuse, have been made so much more appalling by attempts to cover them up. The Church as an institution has tried to tough out scandals, circle the wagons and wait for the enemies to exhaust themselves. But that doesn't work anymore. A lot are demanding choice. In Western Europe, the ecumenical movement has basically just stopped because people are quite happy with variety. They don't mind. People no longer care about structural reunion anymore, for the simple reason they don't much care for structures. And the one-size-fits-all view of Christianity just doesn't work anymore. The current arguments about homosexuality, for example, show the huge gulf between different churches, or even between different groups within the same church. The fact is that there is no way to come up with one statement that is going to make everyone happy. Most of all, though, I think people are demanding the same things as the Patarines in Milan, or Paul writing to the Corinthians, or the Desert Fathers, or the Wycliffites. They want authenticity. They want leaders who will walk the talk. Holding out for some heroes. As I write this, a new pope has just been enthroned. While I was writing history, he was making it. He is the first pope from Latin America. He took the name Francis, which no pope has taken before. He was the first Jesuit to assume the throne. He refused to wear the fancy ermine or the red shoes that were traditional, and kept on the sturdy black boots someone had given him. Before leaving for his official enthronement, he stopped off to pay his hotel bill. He talked about the Jews and the Orthodox as brothers. 4 days ago, as I write this, he went on a Maundy Thursday visit to a youth detention centre and washed people's feet, including, shock horror, the feet of Muslims and women. It's early days, of course, and by the time this book comes out, it might all have gone pear-shaped. He might prove to have a dodgy past. He might fall foul of the powerful Vatican bureaucracy. He might champion an entirely new and even more powerful form of church organ. And even if he doesn't, with the Catholic Church riven by scandals about banking, about corruption, and especially about sexual abuse, there was an awful lot to clear up. He won't and can't please everyone. He is unlikely to make many major changes in Catholic theology, but it's a good start. And the media reaction shows just what can happen when someone comes along and starts acting all Christianly. People want and need examples, people to look up to. One of the real tragedies of the Christian Church has been that just placing someone in an official position automatically granted them respect and honour. Nobody thinks that way, not nowadays. And maybe judging from that story we started with, of old Barzanufius in his cave, maybe not many ever really did. The fact is this: the world needs more than people with a top coat of Christianity. It needs people, popes, priests, archbishops, patriarchs, vicars, monks, nuns, you and me, whose Christianity runs deep. Renewal. Of course, there are big challenges. In America and Britain especially, there has been a rise in a militant atheism. But for all their blustering rhetoric, perhaps the more potent threat to the faith is a comfortable indifference. The West is, despite the best efforts of certain rogue bankers, a wealthy and hedonistic place. Where Christianity is thriving, it is doing so among the poor, the hungry and the marginalised. Perhaps these are the people who will teach the complacent West how to read the Bible afresh. And there is a sense of unease. The events of the last few years have shown there is a healthy distrust of the powers of the world. Perhaps Western Christianity, for so long one of those powers, needs to rediscover its roots among the outcasts of the world. I am certain that Christianity will continue to renew itself. As we saw at the beginning of this journey, it began in a graveyard outside Jerusalem. The movement began at the very point when everyone thought it dead and buried. And that's what Christianity always does: reinvent itself, rise again. It's the resurrection, stupid. Well, thank you for sticking with me to the end of this, if indeed you have. Probably not. Only about 1 people in every 7 videos actually watches one. This has been a completely egotistic, exercise. Been going through this as a kind of lockdown exercise, but tomorrow, Monday the 19th of July, or that's when this is being released, is the last day of lockdown. So freedom is coming, in a sense. We are still being advised to wear masks and all the rest and be helpful to each other. But I targeted this as the date I was going to stop reading and boring people, if indeed you are being bored. So I hope you enjoyed. Anyway, nearly infallible history of Christianity, nearly infallibly spoken. And that's it from me. Have a lovely summer and rest of your life. Be good. And be a Christian. It's good. It's good to be a Christian.